Hang on. I have to cut this out. I choked on my coffee.
I'm going to have some more Bud Light. I hope you leave this in, by the way.
This is going to be the opening.
Oh, gosh. Is that a Rona cough, or is that just a cough?
I really did choke on my coffee. Hang on.
That's like me with the beef jerky.
I need some more water here. Hang on. Welcome to Break Check Podcast, Episode 3. I'm Craig.
And I'm Bryan.
And today we're talking about...
crossovers and electric cars.
Oh, this will be good. I'm excited. Thanks, Bryan, for picking these topics.
Boy.
Crossovers and electric cars. Sorry, everybody that was listening.
Let me just disclaimer this episode. This episode is basically housekeeping for our audience. Because I feel like these topics come up a lot. Mm-hmm. And they're very topical right now in the marketplace. There's a big segment of auto buyers that care about this.
This is true.
Not necessarily saying that it's our top priority, but it is a priority for a lot of people. So
yeah, there's a reason why. Yeah, good point. And there's a reason why every single car manufacturer on the planet is making all of these and making as many of these as they can. And oh, by the way, selling every single one they make. So yeah, good point.
Profusely, yeah, absolutely. Crossovers out the wazoo, and which is why sedans are becoming a rarity. And electric cars. Every time I look at automotive news, I can't seem to avoid an electric car headline. So let's just tackle that too.
Okay, so one of the reasons we picked crossovers is because we're both driving some crossovers this week. Bryan, why don't you start us off with what you have, and then I'll talk about what I got.
Okay, so I am driving the 21 Kia Telluride SX, which is code for super freaking loaded. And
that's the Kia code trim level?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what SX
exactly.
means. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. This is actually the exact same press fleet vehicle I drove in late 2020 at the Texas Auto Riders Truck Rodeo. So I actually had a chance to take this thing off-road, and it did surprisingly well. So I'll have some footage from that event to throw into our review when we actually shoot the review for this thing. So pretty good. So far, so good.
So it went off-roading, so maybe it's not a crossover, but we'll talk about that later. But continue.
That's a very top. That's why we're talking about it right now, because I think this car is very intriguing to me because of that.
Okay. So when you first got this car, you told me at first, well, you needed a lot of money so you could get it because you really liked it. So, and has that continued? Has it changed? It sounds like you still like it, but what are some of the pros and cons?
Well, it's simmered a little bit in terms of me. You know, I wouldn't want this for me as my daily, because we all know that me at 6'5" and 280 pounds wants a Miata for some reason. But for my family and for hauling children, man, it's really compelling. Look, every time I sit in a Telluride, I go, man, this is the one that won a bunch of awards, right? Like SUV of the year from everyone in every country and every publication. I look around and I go, well, that makes perfect sense. And you immediately know that someone's done a lot of homework on this vehicle to make it the way that it is for a reason. And there's a lot to like about it. So, yeah, do I want to spend $50,000 on something like this? Not particularly. I'd rather have a Viper. I use a Viper in my driveway because I'm weird. But I get why these are selling, and man, it's really compelling. I get it.
And so you told me Telluride is the perfect vehicle to take a road trip to Telluride.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Look, the whole time I've been driving this thing all week with just myself in it. I haven't even put car seats in it, so I've underutilized it for its purpose. But I keep telling myself, this is a great rig. I need a road trip to go with this thing, because I can't imagine something on the market today for that kind of money that just has so much room and comfort and is so quiet.
Okay, and so you keep telling me when we talk about it, you keep telling me that's a really good wagon. What do you mean by that?
Well, when I drive it, so, all right, spoiler alert, this thing's based on the Sedona minivan, which was out before the Telluride.
Wait, what? It's a minivan?
Don't tell anyone. There's a stigma attached to minivan. We can't let that out.
Right. Kia would like to keep selling these, so please avoid that.
Yes. Let's please avoid that. So pretend I didn't say that. But
what if we called the minivan an SUV? Does it work the other way?
I wish it was that simple. I've tried calling them manivans, trying to make them cool for hipsters, and no one seems to like the term except for myself. So we'll keep trying. But why I keep thinking station wagon is because I'm getting station wagon vibes. It doesn't feel particularly, like when I look at it in a parking lot, it reminds me of a Ford Flex more than a Ford Explorer. And what I mean is like it looks hunkered down, and there's some styling cues that make it look lower than it is. Yet when I took it off road, it did better than a Subaru Crosstrek that I drove on the same exact course on the same exact day. So it's really bizarre to me.
I'm surprised to hear you say this when you told me this, because every time I see a Telluride, I think, man, that's a big SUV. So here's my question for you: is the Subaru Outback more SUV than the Telluride is more wagon?
I would say yes. I think the Outback is more SUV than the Telluride is wagon. Yeah.
Okay.
Even though I'm getting wagon vibes from this, it's just some aesthetic things. Like there's a good greenhouse in here, which a lot of SUVs for some reason have that tall H point and door sill. I keep thinking of the Yukons and the Tahoes we've driven.
Right.
Those remind me of a bunker more than a greenhouse, and this kind of has that minivan greenhouse or station wagon greenhouse that you would have had back in the day. So it just gives me vibes like that, and it's fun to me because I love station wagons and I actually like minivans, but society doesn't like them. So this is one of those cars that really is that. It's a minivan minus the good doors that minivans have.
Right.
But no one puts their nose at it because they go, "Oh, that's a cool SUV," and it's is it? I mean, is it really? I don't know.
Right.
And we'll talk about that here in a second.
Sure. Okay, so
what have you been driving, Craig?
So I have been driving a 2021 Mazda CX-9 Signature Edition, which I think all Signatures are all-wheel drive. This one's all-wheel drive. I also think they all have the 2.5-liter turbo. Thank you, turbo.
Finally,
Although maybe not. I'll mention that in a second. So this is Mazda's biggest SUV, biggest vehicle. 3 rows.
Wait. Did you just say big?
Mazda's biggest.
Oh, okay. Got it. So if a Miata is a Mustang, then the CX-9 is a
Telluride.
Explorer or Telluride?
Maybe.
Okay, so there's a Mazda scale factor.
There's a Mazda
7/8 scale.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it's I would not call it big. It is a. That's what I keep getting confused as I drive this thing.
Okay.
As I drive this thing around, I don't know what to think, because I think this is more wagon than it is SUV. And so
that is interesting, because when I look at it, I don't think. I don't know. It looks to me like a CX-5 from certain angles. Like
no,
when I first lay eyes on it,
boxier and squishier to me.
Well, you're right. But the styling cues are the same. So when I catch it in the corner of my eye, I go, "Oh, that's CX-5." Like, it doesn't even cross my mind to CX-9 until I really look at it.
See, and I think the CX-9 looks a lot sleeker than the CX-5 because it's longer, I guess, so it's kind of extended.
Sure, yeah.
So, but if I have that feel, I keep comparing it to a Seltos we drove a while back. It feels like a bigger Seltos.
Okay, that's not a bad thing, though.
No, a little heavier, a little less nimble, a little less fuel mileage, but it's very comfortable. It does everything well. It's very nice. Fit and finish is wonderful and superb. It rides well.
Good.
It will do some things in the corners that are fun. I can't figure out what or who this car is for, though. And I keep having this problem when I talk about, you and I review any crossover, and we're going to talk about that for sure in a minute. But, I mean, this thing's great. But here's what I keep telling myself. This is for, I feel like it's for somebody not looking for the 3-row SUV. I don't even know why this thing has a third row. I did get in the back of it earlier with my 10-year-old daughter, and it was not near as roomy as other 3-row SUVs. But, I mean, you could use it if you had to. I just don't know why anyone would want to. If you have to use a third row in this more than once a week, then get a different 3-row SUV is my point. It needs to be a very, very, very rare case, emergency. Boy, I'm glad I got that little jump seat back there. Otherwise, just get something with 2 rows. There's no point. Or use this with just 2 rows and then don't worry about it.
Okay, well, here, what do you think of it as? So you just said this a minute ago. So if it was just a 2-row SUV, but the size that it is, so kind of like a Ford Edge or a Honda Passport kind of sizing, and also just giving more leg room to the second row. Would you like it more? Would it make more sense that way?
It would make more sense to me then if that second row was a little bit bigger, a little bit farther back, and you had more space, and it was more comfortable in that second row. This would make so much more sense to me. It could almost be sold as their premium SUV.
Okay.
Versus the CX-5 is more mid-market and
more volume market too. I don't know that Mazda is,
right.
selling every CX-9 as soon as they build it. I don't know if that's really happening with it.
Right. Yeah. Good point. This is probably not a volume seller for them, and it feels like they've really tried to make this a premium upscale thing, and which is what market's trying to do all over the place. They're trying to go upscale, but still retain some of that zoom, and they've nailed that in this.
Okay. So the ethos is still there. That's still strong.
Ethos is still there, and I think this is for somebody that wants that premium SUV crossover feel, like an Audi. What's their SUV line?
The Q5 or the
yeah. I keep thinking of a Q5.
Well, or Q7 is really what that's.
But the Q7's bigger. Q7's a lot bigger. That doesn't work. So a Q5 is about the same size. The Volkswagen Tiguan's about the same size. I keep thinking of those size vehicles.
Yeah, that's a good point, because when I first saw the CX-9 in person, I thought, this is not competing with a Telluride, even though they're both 3-row SUVs. This is competing with a Tiguan that has the optional 3rd-row jump seat.
Yes.
So I think if we reframe it, it makes a lot more sense.
Right.
Now, I will say I haven't daily driven the CX-9. We're going to swap out here tomorrow, actually. But I'm curious how I'm going to feel about that, because MSRP, not including rebates you can get from your local dealer, but MSRP, that thing is only a couple grand less than the Telluride loaded out. So I'm kind of going,
right.
At that price point, you are losing volume. Does it drive well enough to make up for that? Because we're drivers, we appreciate that. So maybe that will speak to me. So I'm curious how you feel about the Telluride as well when we do our trade. So.
Exactly. So, anyways, that's my short hot take on it. There'll be a review coming soon, and you get the full hot take. But so there you go. So
awesome. Well, I do want to hit on one thing before we get to crossovers.
Okay.
What kind of mileage are you getting? Gas mileage are you getting in that CX-9?
Yes, I'm glad you brought this up. In my normal driving, which is mixed of some spirited driving.
Okay.
Not for a long amount of time, but some spirited driving, and then just, okay, I'm bored, I'm just going to drive normal, and I'm just going to listen to the radio and get to work, okay?
Okay.
And a lot of highway and some back roads. No city.
You have a big mix of terrain in your drive, too.
I do. A lot of hills and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm averaging right at 20, like on the button.
At 20?
Yep.
Wow.
Like 20.0, 20.1.
And this is the 2.5 turbo, 4-cylinder, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I hypermiled a little bit coming home today, and I did hit 26, which is its EPA highway rating. So.
Okay. But if you drive it the way you normally drive to work,
20,
which you get 35 out of your Mazda that you own, right?
Mazda 2, yep.
Mazda 2. And you also have a full-size truck that you get. What do you get on that drive in your F-150?
I get 17 to 18.
Okay. And it's rated at what EPA?
I believe 1620, 1621, something like that.
Okay, so you're just barely under EPA rating on your EcoBoost F-150 on that drive.
Right.
So when you drive, not hypermiling, just normally driving, you're getting 20, give or take, is what you're saying?
Yep.
That's interesting to me. I wonder if this vehicle's not broken in yet or something, 'cause that seems kind of low to me for what it is. But I got to keep in mind, too, that it's a 3-row SUV. It's a big thing. And the CX-5s in the past I've driven have gotten excellent mileage, but they weren't the turbo, and so this is the first turbo we've had. So we'll see how that progresses throughout the rest of the week. I'm hitting now. Granted, keep in mind I usually drive a Ford Raptor, and it gets 12 miles a gallon with the tailwind.
-8, right?
-8, yeah. So basically, in the Raptor, whether I'm driving it spiritedly, doing burnouts, or just hypermiling, it gets 12, no matter what I'm doing. Somehow, city or highway, it gets 12. I'm not, and what I mean by highway is sustained. 75, 80 miles an hour. It just 12 is what it gets.
Right.
For the last 40,000 miles, it gets 12 miles a gallon. In this same drive that I normally take, which is about 25 minutes, a mixture of a little bit of highway, and then the rest is kind of boulevard speeds, 45-ish, 55 max kind of speeds with a few stoplights. I have not broken 20 yet in this, but I've gotten close. So I had 19.8 this morning going to work. And other days, now granted, I've been getting on a little bit and testing the vehicle like we do, and I've had, 16, 17 part of the problem is not enough highway. I think this thing would probably break. I just going off my gut. I think I'd get 22, 23 on a road trip with this. I think that's what it would get.
Okay, fair point.
So, which I think is fair for how big it is.
Yeah, and I'm for sure if I was highway only, not back roads with hills, I'd probably be getting 22, 23 too. Would be my
enough.
guess. To be fair, so
which I guess that makes them pretty comparable. But that takes us to the next topic of CUVs, Greg.
Yes, you mean
not
SUVs?
No.
You mean wagons?
CUVs. Nope. I
mean minivans?
Crossover utility vehicles.
Okay.
And for those that don't know what that means, it means just about every car on the road. That's what that is today.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Pretty much. So when you and I were youngins, Craig, the official vehicle of Texas was the Chevy Suburban.
Yes.
Which was what I call an SUV. It was built on a full ladder frame.
Yeah, what I would call a real SUV.
A real SUV. Oh, I'm glad you differentiated that.
I want to retreat that statement real quick because I know you're going to lead me what you're baiting me into. Not a real SUV. I'm going to say a true or original SUV.
Okay, fair enough, which I'll agree.
Okay.
Because when we were kids, an SUV was on a full frame.
Yes.
And also sedans were on full frames too. So maybe that's not a fair argument.
That's a fair point.
Fair point. So today we have vehicles that are called SUVs that confuse me a lot. Because I think they're really CUVs. For example, the Seltos that we reviewed. That is not an SUV.
That's a CUV.
That is a CUV that's more hot hatch than CUV, and we love it because of that. It's a great thing to drive every day, and also rally. What's not to love? No problems with that, right? But calling it an SUV is just lying to yourself. I don't understand that at all. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's front-wheel drive base, and these are part of the. Well, let's just get into it. What I classify as CUV is something that is most likely front-wheel drive based. Mm-hmm. With optional all-wheel drive, and if it is all-wheel drive, it's going to have a clutch pack style or a Haldex style rear differential or center diff, meaning that it's front-wheel drive and then it's all-wheel drive when it needs to be. It's not
right. It's not. Yeah, it's a full-time all-wheel drive. Doesn't necessarily mean that those rear wheels have power hardly ever at all.
Right. Because you don't need it most of the time. That's
you don't need it, and it's there's no two-speed transfer cases, and you still get a torque steer like a front-wheel drive car.
Some do, some don't.
Some are better than others. Some are better than others.
Right. The Telluride is all-wheel drive, and it does not give any torque steer.
6.9 has a bunch.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. That is interesting. Okay. So one of the differentiators that I look at are frame rails, and also, I can't believe I'm saying this, is there a solid axle? Because traditionally, old school SUVs, Jeeps, first Explorers, Blazers, Broncos, GMC Jimmys, all these things we had when we were kids.
Ram Chargers,
they had a solid axle front and rear, or just in the rear?
At least in the rear, yeah.
Right. So nowadays I would say that's debatable, but
yeah.
For me, my differentiator at the end of the day between an SUV and a CUV, because it is so muddied today, is a 2-speed transfer case. I think
that's exactly you nailed it.
Okay.
Because you and I were talking about this earlier, and I was saying a front wheel biased unibody SUV is a CUV.
I completely agree with that.
And at first I said unibody, and you said, what about the Jeep Grand Cherokee? And I was like, okay, well then I changed it to front wheel biased.
Well, and that's what messes me up, because the Grand Cherokee has always been the anomaly that it's like, well, it's like let me say Grand Cherokee or Range Rover, right? Yep. They're both known for being great off-road, but they have independent suspension, right. They have unibodies, but they have low-speed transfer cases.
Right.
And so that's kind of the qualifier that means you're going beyond the Instagram campsite and you're actually going to go up something difficult. So,
and that's very fair, because I don't know of any. I'm trying to think of a CUV, what we're classifying as CUV. Is there? I can't think of anything else besides a Grand Cherokee, a Land Rover. I don't know if a Durango has a 2-speed transfer case. I'm trying to think of anything that has a 2-speed transfer case. Does the
Hellcat does not have a 2-speed transfer case? I can tell you that.
Do the new Ford Explorers have 2-speed transfer cases?
They do not.
Okay. So then that's a CUV, even though it's rear-wheel biased.
Okay, I was about to bring that up, because the new Explorer is rear-wheel biased, or first. So if you get a 2-wheel drive Explorer, it is only rear-wheel drive.
Right.
And if you get an all-wheel drive Explorer, it has a transfer case that will split power to the front.
Okay.
But it does not have a low-range transfer case.
There you go.
In the current market. Now, we're hoping to have something come up with that in the near future, but as of right now, it does not. So I would call that a crossover as well.
Okay. Well,
So let me get into some of the facts here that are interesting to me. So is a CUV, well, first of all, it is ingrained in automotive journalists to despise the CUV, which I understand that logic, right? We're in that camp. Sometimes we're in that camp. And
well, a lot of times, because almost every single time I get in a crossover, I think I call you and I go, Bryan, I don't understand this car and what it's for, because what is it? Is it a car or an SUV? It's like it can't make up its mind.
Right. Well, and that's precisely it. So let's go back to the first CUV, which in my mind is the AMC Eagle.
Yes.
Okay. Which weirdly, on paper, I haven't driven an Eagle. Have you driven an Eagle, Craig?
I really want to, but no.
No, me neither. I think we would jump at the chance to have one, even though it might be crap, right?
Mm-hmm.
But because it is so cool, by the way, it's rear wheel biased. So it's kind
and
of...
it had a 2-speed transfer case.
Exactly, which is bizarre to me. But nonetheless, that was a station wagon from AMC. They literally just gave it all-wheel drive and lifted it and said, go play in the woods, Colorado.
And nobody sold them. Nobody would buy them.
Nobody bought them. And then the Subaru said, well, we've got a flat, small engine. Let's try that too. And then they sold every single one they ever made.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
And then every owner that bought it died driving that car, or bought another one and then died later on.
Right.
Because they're good. They're great cars.
Yeah, it's a good package.
Exactly. So, in fact, we reviewed the Outback last year. We loved it.
Okay,
great.
But before you go too much further, I do want to, and maybe you're heading this way, but I don't want to mess up your train of thought. But here's my, I guess, why there's crossovers, or why they're weird, or why I struggle with them. So you've got minivans who have these sliding doors that are really functional, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have sedans that are definitely low slung, but they handle really well and they have good gas mileage, right? But you sit low. And then you have station wagons, which are very practical.
That haul things.
They haul things, but nobody wants to be seen dead in one.
I don't know why.
And then you have actual real SUVs, but I guess you're killing the planet when you do that. So out of all that comes the crossover, right?
It's a vehicle that can't. You said earlier you were confused with what it was, right? You struggle with why does this thing exist, or what drives that? Because no one can make their mind up. Everyone's got to do everything with their car apparently. So that's part of the problem. So I want to get into the journalist side of things. Why do journalists hate the crossover? Well, because it represents the death of the sedan in a lot of ways. Because the guy that was buying a Honda Accord is now buying a Honda Pilot. Right. So as families grow, or Passport, take your pick. But they're not getting the station wagon anymore. Like the Ford full size wagon, the Buick full size wagon, all those they're gone. Okay. But I want to ask you the question, Craig. Why do we hate them so much? Because when I look at it on paper, I go, journalists love station wagons.
Yep.
And they love off-roading.
Okay.
Is the CUV not the best of both? Let's be honest, it's not a proper off-roader, but this Telluride's done quite well. So what's the problem?
I don't know. And this is a guy that's first car was a car truck, and it was trying to blend two things, and for some reason I loved that. I don't know.
It was terrible, by the way, but it was very endearing.
Yes. I don't know. And, kind of the history of this, though, the wagon died first.
Yep.
The minivan is almost dead, but still there.
Well, but the minivan killed the wagon.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, probably. You can say that. But the minivan's almost dead. It definitely did. Minivan's almost dead too.
Right.
Now the sedan, in all seriousness, is almost dead. I mean, let's not kid around.
Yeah, the Fusion is running out the inventory of parts until it's dead.
Right. So FCA America and Ford basically said, we're not making cars anymore. We're not making cars anymore. Think about that.
Yeah, GM and Ford did, and then FCA still has the Charger and Challenger because that's kind of their muscle car. That's kind of their Mustang or Camaro. But their Dart is gone. What they have, the Chrysler 300 is gone.
Yep.
The Avenger's been gone forever. I mean, exactly. All the big three have said, we're done.
We're done with
the
cars.
reason why is because nobody wants to buy them. That's the problem.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know why journalists or gearheads or car people don't like him. Because you're right, it checks a lot of boxes. I guess people like him because you get that SUV feel without the SUV tax of the fuel economy, supposedly, which we'll talk about. I think the biggest thing, to be honest with you, is the higher hit point. I think people like
Yep.
The ingress and egress of getting in and out of the thing, the convenience of that is handy to people, and people like that.
Yep.
And then I think they
Completely
like
agree.
sitting up a little bit higher. I think it's those two things more than anything else. And they like the hatch, but they won't ever admit it. Those three things combined is what the crossover does. And maybe it's just marketing. I don't know, because like my favorite kind of shoe is probably a cross trainer because it kind of does everything right.
Sure.
I like cross things, and like everything else, I like cross things. I like, my kayak. I want it to be a good fishing kayak and something else. I want it to be, my favorite. I want to cross a cyclocross bike, right? I want it to be gravel and road.
Sure.
But when it comes to a car, it pisses me off for some reason. I don't have a good reason for it, except that it's killed those other things, maybe, and I'm a little resentful for that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it is.
And I think that's why journalists have a problem with it, right? But the market says, well, I don't care about it driving like a sports car.
Right.
I want to do these things and not look like a minivan. And let's take a break on the minivan real quick. This Telluride's amazing.
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
Uh-huh.
But do you know what they also make? It's called a Sedona, and it has really good doors that my child will not slam into the car next to me. So
Right.
I feel like they make a better version for families called the Sedona.
Yeah, and nobody buys them.
No, they'll buy the Telluride 4-1, I guarantee you.
Oh, yeah.
Which is still a great car. But because of the doors, I go, well, it's not a minivan anymore. It's just a station wagon. Mm-hmm. So I should be clamoring for this thing. Mm-hmm. Now this one's obviously expensive and it's big, but I will say I'll recommend this to a lot of people. This is a really good package. Okay, so we've kind of covered the things why people like them. They're easy to live with. They're comfy. They're capable-ish. Some of them are fast. There's a lot of European versions of crossovers that are nutty. Or the Durango Hellcat, the Explorer ST is quite quick as well. Some are efficient, some are not. I don't think this is as efficient as people think it will be, but the minivan's not that efficient either. It's a hole in the wind. Mm-hmm. But here's my counterpoint to it for, again, our Texas region. I'm going to loop this thing back up. You can buy a full-size truck that gets about 25 miles a gallon, or 23 realistically. Unless you just need the third row, what am I missing? Like, why just get the pickup truck?
For those playing the drinking game at home, waiting for us to recommend a half-ton pickup, there you go. Right. There it is again.
There you go. Yep. Don't choke on your drink, please.
Yeah. I'm with you. I don't know. I think and to be clear, one of the things you've settled is so that Telluride is a crossover, so is the CX-9.
Mm-hmm.
And I struggle with that because I feel like the Tellurides, the Pilots, the Atlases, those big crossovers, they're so big I want to call them an SUV. But you're right, they're crossovers. They're not made to go off-road.
Yeah, exactly.
Some people call them soft roaders. Maybe that's a better thing. Here's what I wish would happen. Maybe that's the right term. Yeah. Here's what I wish would happen. When it comes to sedans, the EPA classifies them subcompact, compact, mid-size, large, right? Why can't we get that with at least crossovers? The EPA wants to call these things trucks. They're not trucks. Quit calling them trucks.
No. Well, they're more car than they are truck for sure, because
just call them
chassis
crossovers
are often shared.
And give them a crossover class size. And then it would be easier for me to distinguish, that's just a large crossover versus a compact crossover. And I guess you can kind of do that, and people do, but the EPA doesn't make it easy for people, and there's some confusion in the marketplace, and that's one of the struggles.
Well, and that's part of the reason why you have makers like Kia with like 19 crossovers of some sort. And so
it's insane.
It's insane. And look, they're selling them as fast as they can make them. So
right. Okay, but can we get on to one of my problems with crossovers?
Sure.
I'm okay that they're not the greatest off-roaders because, look, most people don't need that much capability off-roading, so I'm fine with that.
Right, us included.
I'm okay with a higher hit point. I'm okay with being higher up and the better visibility. I'm okay with all that. Right. What I struggle with is I'm not okay with the handling not being as good because they're taller. And I'm not okay with the quote-unquote supposedly better fuel economy not being near as good as they seem to lead people on to be.
Right.
When I can get almost 20 in a Tahoe, why would I get the crossover?
Right. Okay, and so that actually is what I want to come back to, is because the market has said, and this is what I hear from people all the time, whenever someone's asking what car should I get, and I go, go get insert sedan here, because that's really what everyone needs is a sedan.
That's what people need, yes.
That's what they need. And they go, yeah, but I want to sit up higher. I want an SUV. And I go, oh, no, you don't want an SUV. You want a crossover.
Right.
Because you don't want it to drive like a Suburban. You want it to sit up as high as a Suburban.
Right.
Not the same thing.
And
so they end up getting it. And every single time someone gets the crossover. And I've kind of had to concede that no matter what I tell someone, if they're actually asking my advice, they're going to get the crossover anyways, and that's okay.
Yeah, they're great cars. I'm not saying
they're great cars.
Yeah.
If you're in stop-and-go traffic, I get it. There's a visibility aspect, especially in DFW and the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Everyone has a pickup truck, and you can't see over the damn thing. So you either get something low enough that you can see underneath it, or you get something tall enough to see over it.
Or some people can't see you. I just want to throw that out there.
Interesting. Also a good point, right? There's the whole pancake idea, right? People don't want to be pancaked under something else. They want to be tall enough. One more thing I want to bring up. The first car that taught me about H-point and visibility and ease of access, you talk about H-point, that means getting in and out of the car without having to climb up into it or getting down into it. Right. The Chrysler PT Cruiser was the first car to really solve that in our lifetime. And didn't get the credit that it deserves.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up. So this really did start in the early 2000s, late 90s. These higher hit point vehicles coming from everyone. So you had the PT Cruiser, which is really a tall Dodge Neon, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Exactly. But with no off-road principles to it at all.
And then in Ford had the Ford Escort for years. Low slung car, like a car is supposed to be. Just not low slung, but you sit low.
Right.
And then the replacement came out, and it was a Ford Focus,
which sat pretty high.
That seat sat way higher than in years past in cars, and so even the cars
people loved it. That car sold great.
So
then you had the Escape after the Focus.
So then they started in the cars, slowly getting that hit point higher. Then they finally just said, "Well, screw it, we'll just call them SUVs now and make them taller."
Yep, exactly.
So
it's crazy. Okay, well, now that we've beat that dead horse, how do we, on paper, as journalists, fundamentally like station wagons that can go off-road? Yet when you and I drive them, some of them just suck the soul out of the drive. How does that happen?
I don't know, because we should love a station wagon that goes off-road, but...
Totally. Yeah, on paper you go, that's brilliant. I'll take 2 of them. Put flames on the side of it. Put a Hellcat in it. That sounds great. And we drive them, and we're somehow let down in some way every time. And I think it gets back to the compromise factor, right? Because it is trying to be a Swiss Army knife. And so inherently, it's not going to ever be a Miata. It's never going to be a Mustang. It's just kind of how it is. So,
and that's why they're so popular, because most people they want one car. And then they need it to check a ton of boxes.
Yep.
And so that's why they end up with a crossover. I think the car heads, the gearheads, the journalist people, we get frustrated because we know they're like tools for a job. You wouldn't use a hammer on something that needs a screwdriver, so you get a hammer and a screwdriver. And so
good point. That's a good point.
We get the tool. We want the tools for the job that do what they're supposed to do as well as possible. Which is also, again, I think the better Swiss Army knife is a half-ton pickup crew cab.
I agree. So at least for adult males that have children and jobs and things like that.
Or
the
females.
pickup truck does more for me than the crossover does. Or females. Sorry, I don't mean to be gender specific, but
I just want everybody to know on this podcast who's sexist and who's not. So there you go.
Oh my gosh. What I'm getting at is that I'm more likely to get muddy than my wife will be to get muddy. That's all I'm getting at. So
don't worry, I'll cut this out for you to save you. So
that's fine. Thank you. Okay. With that very fumbly segue, Craig, can we talk about electric cars, because they want to be talked about? All right.
I'm sorry. What are we doing? Are we doing a podcast now? You want to start?
We're doing a podcast. Yep, we're talking about electric cars, Craig. I want you to...
Wait, on purpose?
On purpose, yes.
Electric cars.
I can't avoid it, Craig. I'm tired of seeing it come at my feet. I gotta air this out.
Okay, let's hear it. I'm going to pretend like I care in this segment.
Okay, whoever's listening to this, if you made it this far, first of all, thanks for hanging out.
If you made it this far for your soul, tune out now.
No. Give me 2 seconds.
Okay.
Go to your automotive feed, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or Autoblog or CarBuzz or wherever you get your automotive content sprayed at you, or BrakeCheckShow.com.
Thank you.
You won't see this content there yet, but at some point you will. If you listen to the headlines or even just read a newspaper, you believe that every car on the planet is electric. And if yours isn't, it should be. Why isn't your car electric?
But they're not.
So, Craig, do you know what the market share is currently of electric cars in the United States?
Can I guess?
Please.
Okay, the media suggests and I hate to. Great. I've just become one of those guys that's blaming the media. Great.
Oh, great. What do you think the media would suggest the market share is of electric cars?
25%.
Okay. What do you think it actually is?
I'd be shocked if it was even remotely close to 5%.
2.5%.
Okay. All right.
And that's in 2019, 2.5% of the market share.
Mm-hmm.
So Tesla's grabbing headlines.
A lot.
GM is grabbing headlines a little bit. Ford is grabbing headlines. Mach-E's, Chevy Bolts, all this good stuff.
And by the way, every car manufacturer's plan for the future involves, we're going to go electric.
Absolutely. Volvo, we make one gas engine with 3 different types of boost, and next year they'll all be electric, right?
Yes.
So, my next question for you is, every single automaker is throwing big money at it. Why? Why are they doing that? I don't know the answer to that, but I'll tell you what my problem with it is.
I think I know the answer to that if you want to know in a minute, but my guess.
Sure. My issue with why you and I don't have electric cars currently, and I'm not saying that I'm anti-electric, I'm saying they're not there yet. It's range. Now, that's getting better.
I would disagree a little bit.
Okay. Why? How would you disagree?
Or at least I would throw in along with range. I think range is becoming less and less of an issue. To me, it's still the recharge time in between the range.
Okay. Well, and that's what I mean by range, encompassing. If I can't comfortably take my family on a road trip to, let's say, Fort Worth to Houston, which is one we do routinely, and not have range anxiety, I'm not interested.
Right. I've got to be able to recharge or put more gas in 10 minutes or less and be able to go 200 or 300 miles again. And we're nowhere close to that.
And look, I'm in the diaper phase. I'll even say 20 minutes or less.
Sure.
If I can get another 100 miles or say 150 miles in 20 minutes or less, that all of a sudden is doable, right? If there's a rapid charger I can plug into and do that, and
all of a sudden it's becoming maybe doable. Yep.
Totally. And we're getting closer, right? Like we see these Tesla charging stations in Waco and different places midway. It's happening, right? All these automakers are saying that by 2025, and I'm just going to bring up General Motors. General Motors is claiming they're going to push out 1 million electric vehicles per year by 2025.
There's no way.
There's no possible way. For reference, the Ford F-150 is about 900,000 vehicles a year.
How many cars does General Motors sell right now? 5 million a year? 6 million?
Well, they don't sell cars at all, first of all.
Well, vehicles.
In volume.
Yeah.
I'd have to look that up. I'm not sure. I'm sure it's about,
the total U.S. car market's around 15, 18 million a year.
Right.
Yeah.
I would bet GM has, a third of that pie.
Yeah.
I think that's fair to say.
Mm-hmm.
When you count volume sales and fleet sales and that kind of stuff. Okay, so I pulled up a report that was reported by Car and Driver, and they're projecting that by 2025, there will be a 4.9% market share for electric cars.
I believe that.
I believe that too, but that's still less than 5% of the market share. So in 4 years from today, we will still be talking about it just this much, and it still won't matter nearly as much as the world thinks it does.
Yep.
Drives me nuts. So for reference, the Nissan Leaf, at its peak, sold 30,000 units in 1 year. In that same year, the Nissan Rogue sold 400,000 units.
Right.
Another crossover.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So just for reference there, it's just not there yet. Although I'm excited about it. Look, the Mustang Mach-E is apparently, you can be mad there's a horse on it. I am too.
Just call it something else and be happy.
Call it something else. Apparently it's really good, right? And Teslas have some build quality issues, but they're selling everyone they can make as well. In fact, this evening, I'm not sure if you caught your news feed, Craig, Tesla's finally updated the Model S.
Mm-hmm. Also, I don't know if you checked your news feed. They recorded a not the greatest profit and lost a lot of shares or money in their stock. So,
for sure, but Elon doesn't care about that. It's all about the headline and driving, right? So that doesn't, actual productivity doesn't matter for Tesla. It's the headline and the stock price, right? Which is doing very well. So somehow it's doing very well. Do you want to know why a gearhead should care about electric cars?
Yes, and I would like to guess why manufacturers care, but go ahead.
Yeah, I want to know the manufacturer one too. Start with that, actually. Let's get into that first.
So I think there's 2 reasons why we keep hearing so much about electric cars and why car manufacturers care. And then I would love to definitely hear why gearheads should. So I think one is it's leading edge technology. So, when the smartphone first came out, all you heard about it was, oh my gosh, the latest smartphone. And what can you believe what it can do? And people standing in line for the latest iPhone 5 or 6 or whatever. right?
Oh, sure.
But
yeah,
now
absolutely.
we're into iPhone, 11 or 12? I can't keep up with them anymore.
I don't even know.
And
But
does
no one's
anybody?
standing in line for it anymore.
But nobody even cares when the new one comes out, right? Because
Right.
they're all kind of good, and everybody's got one, and cool, right? So I think we got a little bit of the leading edge technology thing going on, and so it's just people are talking about it. They don't see them everywhere. Not everybody's neighbor has one yet, and so it's really still strange and weird and neat. Number two, I think the reason car manufacturers care about them so much, and they'll never admit this, but once you figure out the battery cost, the rest of the car is so unbelievably cheap to make compared to an internal combustion engine. There's so many less components, moving parts. It's a much simpler, once they figure out the battery thing, more efficient packaging and design. So I get it.
Yeah.
I understand why they're coming.
In terms of power plant, it's much, much less complicated. I mean, there's just nothing to break.
There's nothing to fix or not near as much to maintain or replace, or it makes sense, and that's why they are coming. And at some point we'll have them. But to your point, it's going to be a while. So, anyways, I think that's why they care. So,
yeah, and you brought up a good point because as a gearhead and someone who likes to turn wrenches and that kind of stuff, when you think about a gas-powered engine, it's kind of bizarre, right? It's an air pump effectively, and it takes fuel and it ignites it on fire and makes it compress and turn this crank and all these weird things. And you're kind of like, that is bizarre, but it is so efficient, and it is the easiest and most effective way to get around for 97.2 or 0.5% of the population, right? Like it is an effective and refined tool at this point. It's been around long enough.
Right.
You look at the electric motor, it's really simple. Like if you're a mechanic, you better get used to brakes and suspension because that's all you're going to do.
Yeah, right.
I just like you're not pulling heads and doing compression tests anymore down the road.
Yeah, all of a sudden Midas can do everything on your car.
Right, yeah. The dealer needs to watch out for the service aspect of it because besides changing the battery itself, until someone hacks that process, they're losing their service.
Yeah, and the only thing left after that of batteries are just the motors on the actual wheels, which will just be plug and play. No one's going to rebuild the motor, or they'll send them off to get rebuilt.
Hey, or say you rebuild it. Okay, you'll rebuild it in a factory and bring it back as a refurb. I mean, you're not going to rebuild it in the shop, right?
Yeah, so... Yeah.
So bizarre. Okay, so one of the reasons why electric cars are not catching on as quick as we would think is because in metro areas, they make sense where people buy cars instead of pickup trucks. Yep. They work. Everywhere else where trucks, like we've talked about in previous episodes, sell like hotcakes.
Yep. Well, and where electric cars do terrible is at speed on the highway.
Oh, yeah, they just burn energy the entire time.
They do terrible there.
Yeah, where gas is inverted. So if you live in a rural environment, electricity doesn't make sense at all.
Right.
Something else I want to get at is that you hit it earlier, batteries. Batteries are expensive to produce. Mm-hmm. Which makes this cheap economy car very expensive, 40 or 35, 40, 50 grand, right?
Right.
Well, what I see coming down the road is pickup trucks. They already cost 60 grand.
Yeah, they make more sense.
The truck buyers used to paying 50 plus for a pickup and not blinking an eye at it.
Right.
They're used to that. So if you get an EV in there for 55, no one's going to go, well, I'm not doing that. They'll consider it. So we'll see how that goes. That might be something that changes the trends. But I want to end on a high note because I know you and I aren't exactly excited about electric cars.
Yeah, why is the gearhead supposed to be excited about these? So go ahead.
Well, they're not fast, but they're quick. Okay. So quick is 0 to whatever, and fast is the ultimate number. Well, Tesla has put another headline out, which I'm not going to take on its face value at this point, but here's what it reads out. The Model S has been redesigned, and by redesigned, I mean they gave it a goofy yoke-style steering wheel, so it's not a circle now. It's like an airplane yoke. Beyond that, as far as I can tell, nothing's really changed on the design, which is fine. I never thought it was ugly, but it does look a little old at this point. Mm-hmm. But it does have 1,000 horsepower, according to whatever electric horsepower is.
Right.
0 to 60 in 1.9 and a top speed of 200 miles an hour. So, in a range, and here's the actual important part, which if this rings true is very important, 510 miles per charge.
And that's the impressive part.
That's the actual headline. So, like we started this discussion, it's about range, and I think that once that puzzle gets solved and how you get that energy back into that battery, now we're talking a little bit.
I'm with you. Now, the only last thing I'll add about, you're right, electric cars are awesome in a straight line. Here's where they fall apart and on their face.
everywhere else.
Everywhere else in the turns and the twisties, like forget it. It's over. It's not
Dynamically
happening.
everywhere else. Yeah.
They're so heavy. I mean, you do have a low center of gravity, so that does help, but that's about it. So,
but at what cost, right? And so,
right.
to the gearhead that still likes a visceral, linear power band, don't cry yet. That day is not gone. And guess what? Gas motors are at their peak. They're doing. I mean, the ND the ND2 Miata is a prime example of that. Great engine. Revs out like
we
crazy.
are in the. The good news is we're at the tail end, and it may last a while. Of internal combustion motors are just unbelievable right now. This is the best they've ever been. They're going out at their peak. If this is truly the beginning of the end, they are peaking and they're wonderful. So hopefully it'll be a while. To me, where's that turning point? To me, the turning point's when 50% of the cars on the road are electric, and I think that is.
Yeah,
I would guess
that's a good point.
At least a couple decades away.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to hit that 50% mark until you and I are retiring, if I had to guess.
Right.
But, we'll just see. Headlines seem to tell us that the day is already here. We know that it is not. But you know what? There is hope that fun electric cars will happen. Cars like the Mach-E are apparently quite fun.
Yeah, and I could be completely wrong because technology progresses quick when it starts progressing. So
Exactly. So let's give it a fair shake. And in the meantime, let's enjoy our V8s and our high-revving four-bangers and everything else in between. And I think you alluded to a potential future episode of the heyday of the horsepower wars because it wasn't for our dads, it's for us. We're in it right now.
That's right. We're in it now. Thank you. All right. Well, that was a great episode. Thanks for listening if you made it this far, and hopefully you're not too depressed, and you'll tune in for the next one. So with that, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Talk to you later.